What's going on, everybody? Good Mike Work Commentaries back at you finally with episode 522. This is going to be your full Survivor Series 2018 weekend recap and review. I'm going to discuss everything here. We're going to go all the way back to last Saturday and talk about NXT Takeover. I'll discuss Survivor Series, the post-Survivor Series Monday Night Raw and Smackdown Live. We'll preview the card for TLC and what that looks like so far, and we'll get into some other wrestling news, stories, and items and tidbits that are floating around out there, along with all of my personal experiences from attending Survivor Series this weekend in Los Angeles. It was a blast, and I am exhausted. First things first, though, I want to wish everybody here in the United States a very happy and safe Thanksgiving holiday. This podcast will be uploaded on Thanksgiving. You should be listening to this right as you are putting your turkey in the oven. This is the normal time of the week that I come up here and do a podcast. I was trying to get this episode up early and do it a day before, and I recorded a long, beautiful, delicious hour-and-a-half long episode, and the audio came out sounding like shit. I could not believe it. It was loaded with feedback and static, and it's something that happens to me like once every 30 or 40 podcasts. It's so annoying. So I have to re-record this now, and unfortunately the podcast will not be up early. It will be up at normal time. But regardless of that, hopefully you guys will get a chance to listen to this while you enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday. To everyone else, everywhere else in the world, nothing is really different for you, so just sit back and relax and enjoy the episode. As most of you know, because I have been mentioning this in many episodes in the past few weeks, I attended Survivor Series this year, made the trip up to LA, and had an absolute blast. My God, what a weekend. It was so fun. It's definitely something I need to do more of. This was my first live WWE show since 2005. If you can believe that. So it was really fun to go up there and experience that. And especially now with the YouTube channel and everything, I got to meet a whole bunch of fans and just had an overall beautiful, wonderful time. And it's something that I am really looking forward to doing again. Many of you know my homegirl, Catherine, from the live streams on Mondays or from Twitter. She was awesome enough to fly all the way out here from New York to join me on this trip to LA, and it was great. Girl, I could not have gotten through that weekend without you. You are the absolute best partner in crime ever, and we saw a lot of stuff, and we did a lot of stuff. On Saturday, prior to NXT, we attended Bruce Pritchard's live podcast, Something to Wrestle With Live with Conrad Thompson and Bruce. It was awesome. We had VIP tickets for that, so we had to be there pretty early, like 11 o'clock in the morning, and got a chance to go inside and hang out with them and meet them and talk a little bit and have a drink and sit down. We had seats right up front, and that was a really fun show to watch and experience live because it's much different than their podcast episodes where they kind of like discuss one topic per week. This was basically the two of them just up there shooting the shit for a couple of hours and brought in a few special guests. We saw Lillian Garcia, and the big guest of the night was Gerald Briscoe. Joined Bruce and Conrad up there and told some really funny stories. And you should be seeing a lot of these pictures right now as I'm talking. I plan on including a lot of those images that I took for the YouTube video here. But that turned out to be a lot of fun, and I will definitely hit those guys up next time they are anywhere in the Southern California area. From there, right when the show ended, because the show ended 1 hour before TakeOver started, we had to hop right in an Uber and jet over to the Staples Center. And we weren't even planning on attending TakeOver at first until Aaron Rift. Big shout out to Aaron Rift from NoDQ.com. He had tweeted out that he had some extra NXT TakeOver tickets that he was selling at face value, so we took them and purchased them and went and sat with Aaron and Jeff Meacham during TakeOver. That was a lot of fun, and I even joined the NoDQ guys across the street from the Staples Center at the Marriott for their live review of TakeOver, so sitting in on that was a lot of fun and meeting more YouTubers and more podcasters. And let me tell you, getting recognized is something that I don't think I am ever going to get used to. It was very cool and a great honor to meet so many fans of the channel this weekend. A couple of guys were sitting a few rows behind us during TakeOver, and we ran into them as we were walking out. Met a really nice couple of fans at Survivor Series as well, and No DQ even had a 20-year meet and greet or meetup celebration across the street from the Staples Center. We showed up for the final hour of that and got to meet even more people, which was nice. And just the overall experience of it, talking to people, hanging out, and going to a show like that is something that I haven't done in a long time, and I really, really had a good time. So big thank you to everybody that I talked to or interacted with or met. You guys were awesome, and I can't wait to do it again. Before I start discussing everything we're going to get into tonight, I just want to mention a couple of things first, because there probably are a lot of new listeners and new subscribers coming into the channel in the last couple of weeks. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to my channel. We are eyeballing 25,000 YouTube subscribers, so that is on the horizon. We will probably get there before the end of the year. And also, smash that like button. Let's try to get those likes to, let's say 300 for this episode. So if you can do that for me, I would very much appreciate it. Also, if this is your first time listening to me, you can download this episode in podcast form over on my website, goodmicworkcommentaries.com. If you prefer some of the podcast apps like Stitcher or Spotify or iTunes, you can find me over there. You can also support the channel over on my Patreon page. The link is in the description below. You can donate via PayPal right on my website, or you can buy a t-shirt over at prowrestlingtees.com. As a matter of fact, they are right in the middle of a week-long Black Friday sale where you get all sorts of great deals. So link is in the description below for that if you want to pick up a shirt and support the channel. And incidentally, my NWO font logo t-shirt is now available over on my Pro Wrestling Tees store. That design was not originally available over there because I had a bunch of them that I was selling on my own. Those are all gone and sold out now, and I know a few of you have been messaging me wanting that design, so that is now available over on ProWrestlingTees.com, so make sure you check that out. Hopefully that long, drawn-out intro didn't bore you too much. We are now ready to get into this long Survivor Series weekend. Now, since it's Thursday and it's pretty late, I'm not going to go through an entire match-by-match, segment-by-segment review of all four of these shows. I'm going to discuss these shows in a very general sense, give you guys my personal opinions and memories of them, and then I'm going to get out of here and start working on other videos, because I do have a couple of other videos in the works, to PayPal donation videos that are coming to the channel in the next couple of weeks too, that I need to get finished up and done ASAP. So why don't we backtrack all the way back to Saturday and discuss NXT Takeover. This was a crazy good show. I loved it. We had really good seats for this thing. We were in the premiere level, which is kind of in the middle, but we were right up on the front row, so there was nobody standing in our way, and we had a perfect bird's eye view of the War Games event. Pretty much all of the images you're going to see here from TakeOver and Survivor Series were taken by me on my own phone, so this is kind of where I was sitting and kind of get a general idea of where I was. And this TakeOver, as usual, was amazing. Isn't it crazy that even if we have a TakeOver that's like a B-plus show, it's considered bad? That's how great these takeovers are. I give this show a solid A from top to bottom. I thought it was very entertaining. We had a couple of potential Match of the Year candidates on this show as well, especially Johnny Gargano and Alistair Black. That match was crazy good. Alistair Black, I think this was his first match back since his injury, and he looked incredible. Looked like he maybe slimmed down a little bit or was in a little bit better shape, but the storytelling in this match was off the hook, and I'm still yet to go back and watch TakeOver or Survivor Series on the WWE Network, so all of my memories of this are just from what I saw in person. I haven't even taken a look back on the network yet or how this came off on TV. But for me personally, from where I was sitting, this match could easily be considered a Match of the Year candidate, which is something that we seem to say in every single takeover. When you think of all the takeovers that we've done, every single time there's a match on there where you say, that might have been the greatest NXT match of all time. I know I've said that at least a dozen times, and Gargano and Black did not disappoint, and that was a fantastic match. I loved the Tommaso Ciampa and Velveteen Dream match as well. That far exceeded expectations for me. How about Velveteen Dream doing the Hogan impersonation again? I think he did it last year at War Games as well, where he donned the red and yellow. This year he was doing the black and white, and they put on an absolutely phenomenal match. If I had one criticism of it, maybe there was one or two more finisher kickouts than I would have personally liked, but hey, that's nitpicking. Overall, that match was really good, and Velveteen Dream is 23 goddamn years old. It is scary how good this guy is and how much potential he really has. So let's keep our fingers crossed that Velveteen is going to be a big deal one day in the future, because that kid is just incredible. I was happy to see Ciampa retain, though. As much as I like Velveteen, I think I like the belt more on Ciampa right now, and I wouldn't even rule out the possibility of him maybe realigning with Gargano and forming a heel DIY. That would be a lot of fun to see happen sometime in the future. But those two matches, I think, individually were just so beautiful to watch, and I can't wait to go back and at least take a look at them on the network. The War Games match was equally as good as last year, I believe. I was asking a lot of fans about that, like which War Games match did you like better? And it was pretty much a toss-up. Everybody loved both matches. I think I might have liked this one just a little bit more than last year's. I like the stuff that they did with Pete Dunne. There was some rumors that Pete Dunne has a foot injury or some sort of an injury where it might limit his work. So I guess that's why they did the deal where they kept him in the cage as long as possible. He even got locked in there at one point until the referees came out with bolt cutters and let him out. And then he hit the ring and started going apeshit on everybody. I think my favorite spot of the entire War Games match was when all 8 men were standing in between the 2 rings. They had that long kind of like steel plate that connected the 2 rings together. It used to not be like that. Back in the NWA and WCW, there was just a gap there, and you could fall through that gap if you were small enough. But they kind of had something covering it, so all 8 guys got in between the 2 rings in that little tight spot and started brawling with each other. I thought that was a great visual, and it looked awesome. And we saw Undisputed Era take the loss here. I kind of thought that they would win because they are, a cohesive faction and a unit where the other team was kind of just thrown together with Ricochet and Pete Dunne and War Raiders. But I'm glad they won because it made for a great match. And they were just doing some insane spots in there. I loved the visual at the end with Ricochet and Pete Dunne standing on top of the cage, holding up their respective belts. That looked great. The War Games match I thought was equally as good as last year, maybe even a little bit better. And I really hope that they keep War Games as an NXT exclusive. Another thing that I was talking to fans about this weekend is if they brought that concept to the main roster. And I am very, very much against that. I don't think WWE needs it. They already have Elimination Chamber. They already have Hell in the Cell. They already have a ton of crazy match concepts. I think War Games needs to stay in NXT and never leave. I think it should be a November tradition. I think if it went to the main roster, it would be completely ruined. And I think what makes it so special is that it is contested inside of an NXT arena. And that's the way it should be. A lot of fans feel like it's not a true War Games match because there's no top on it. But to me, that's an easy compromise. I'm willing to let that go. We've heard stories of how many times the War Games idea was pitched to Vince McMahon over the years, and he has always turned it down. So now that they finally got NXT going, and he said, fine, you can have War Games, but do it in NXT, and I don't want a top on it, whatever. I understand. WWE doesn't want 2 cages with a top on it. They already have the Hell in the Cell. And the Hell in the Cell, in my mind, was always WWE's answer to War Games. So I don't think the WWE ever thought they needed the War Games concept, but it fits really well in NXT. We also had the women's match, which I did like. My only criticism of this is I felt that it was a very short match for a 2 out of 3 falls contest. I mean, it went really quick. I don't know how many minutes, 12, 15 minutes at the most, which is pretty short for 2 out of 3 falls. But we did see Shayna Baszler retain the NXT title. There was a lot of interference in this thing, too. We saw 2 of the MMA 4 horsewomen come out there and join Shayna Baszler. They interrupted pretty early in that match. And then Kairi Sane had some interference on her behalf. We saw Io Shirai and I believe somebody else. I can't remember who now, but there was a lot of interference going on there. It was 1 fall apiece until the finish when Kairi Sane went for the big elbow. Shayna Baszler caught her into a pinning combination, kind of like a crucifix, and got the 1-2-3 and retained the title. If you look at the replay, though, Kairi Sane's shoulder was up, so I don't know how that's going to play into any future matches moving forward, but I was happy to see Shayna Baszler retain. I really didn't think she was going to drop the belt right after winning it at Evolution, so it really wasn't a surprising finish there, and the match was a little bit shorter, but it was still a really good match, and I have very little negative things to say about it. And really, TakeOver was a 4-match card. That was your 4 big matches. We did have Matt Riddle open up the show to take on Cassius Ohno. This match was rumored to take place. The 2 of them have had their issues with each other on NXT TV lately. So Matt Riddle opened up the show. He came out, cut a promo. Cassius Ohno came out with the mic as well and cut a promo in the aisleway. The 2 of them wound up agreeing to a match. And as soon as the bell rang, Matt Riddle caught Cassius with a knee to the face and pinned him in about, 6 seconds. An extremely quick match. Some fans were upset about that. Me, I really wasn't. I like Matt Riddle. I think they're going to try to make him a very big deal. And Ohno's job is pretty much just to put guys over. That's all he's really there to do. I think he also has kind of like a behind-the-scenes role with NXT. He probably helps train a lot of people. He's a good veteran and a good mind to have back there, and he's very valuable. And I don't really ever see him being called up to the main roster. A lot of people feel that he's being treated unfairly and he's not, he doesn't deserve to be jobbed out like this, but I don't really see it like that. I kind of see Cassius as just being a guy there, a utility player that's really not going to do much, and I don't really see the need to even bring him to the main roster. He's valuable where he is. Let's move on to Survivor Series. I had so much fun at this show. Our seats were amazing. We paid a lot of money for our seats, and they were worth every penny because I had a perfect view. We were sitting right in basically the front row over top of one of those little side entrances that you see throughout the arenas, you know, that security or whatever comes through. And we were sitting right over top of the one that all of the talent was being ushered in and out of, that was working the kickoff show or the commentary table or making a guest appearance or whatever. We saw a lot of guys walking back and forth through there. Booker T and Jerry Lawler, got a glimpse of Mario Lopez and his kids. Saw Lillian Garcia down there. Really funny incident with Drake Maverick. I guess he was doing the kickoff show, or he was doing a segment during the kickoff, and when he was done filming that, he was walking back to go back through the tunnel, and he was stopped by a security guard, and they wouldn't let him through. And you see him talking to the guy like, hey, dude, I'm one of the talent, let me through. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry, and lets him through. Drake gets about another 5 feet, and he's stopped by a second security guard. And he's trying to explain himself, and then finally the guy lets him through, and Drake gets another 5 feet, and another security guard stops him. So Drake Maverick is so fucking little that the security didn't even know that he was working for WWE. It was kind of an embarrassing weekend for him. First, he's denied access to the backstage area, then he pisses his pants at Survivor Series. So that was pretty funny to see. The big story during Survivor Series was the utter and complete domination by Monday Night Raw. What the hell was that about? Raw went 6-0 in the matches. They won everything. Technically, it was 6-1. Smackdown did win the big tag team match on the kickoff show, but they didn't even count that in the score. After Survivor Series, they announced the final score. They showed it up on the screen as Raw 6 and Smackdown 0. So I kind of thought if they made Raw 6-0, there's got to be a storyline reason as to why they did that, and I'm sure we will find out more on Smackdown Live this week. But Smackdown Live sucked on Tuesday night, and we got absolutely nothing about Raw's domination on that show, and it was one of the weaker Smackdowns of the year, so that was pretty disappointing. Monday Night Raw won with the Intercontinental and U.S. title champion versus champion match, Seth Rollins versus Shinsuke Nakamura. Seth got the victory there. I predicted Nakamura to win because I thought Dean Ambrose would make an appearance in this thing. We saw no Dean Ambrose at all. I thought for sure that Dean Ambrose would come out and cost Seth the victory, adding heat to their feud and their Intercontinental title match coming up in a few weeks, and it would be a good notch under the belt of Nakamura to have a victory like that, and I thought it was a situation where everybody wins, but instead we just got a straight one-on-one match, and Seth beat Nakamura in a pretty good outing. It was a really good match. I was just surprised that we got no interference from Dean in that thing. Raw also won the Tag Team Champions match as well. The Authors of Pain did defeat the Bar. This was the match where Drake Maverick pissed himself. I thought the Authors of Pain would win here. They just won the belts, and I'm not really ready to see them lose yet. I'm a big fan of the Bar. I love them, but I would really like to see WWE push the AOP like super monsters like they were in NXT. So for them to win here, I really have no complaints with that. The 5-on-5 women's match was the only other match I predicted incorrectly. I kind of thought SmackDown would get the victory there just because they needed the victory, but no. Raw won that match as well, and Nia Jax wound up surviving, and I thought that was great. I even recorded the fans' reaction at the show of Nia Jax's entrance. I wanted to see what LA was going to do when she came out, and they booed the shit out of her because it was less than a week that that incident with Becky Lynch took place, so it's very fresh in the fans' mind, and they gave Nia Jax an earful, and it was pretty amusing to watch the crowd just lose their shit when she got in the ring. But I was telling myself as I was sitting there watching the match, I was like, man, they should have Nia Jax win. You know, Nia Jax, this whole situation with Becky Lynch is extremely controversial right now. Everybody is furious with Nia Jax. And what's making them even madder, apparently, is that WWE is turning this situation into an angle. This is absolutely the same thing that I would do if I was WWE. I think they would be idiots if they did not take advantage of this situation that has fallen into their lap, this unfortunate botch by Nia Jax caving in the face of Becky Lynch, and turning it into a storyline, turning it into an angle, and building up for this big epic confrontation between Nia Jax and Becky Lynch sometime down the line, where Becky Lynch, when she finally gets her hands on Nia Jax, is going to beat the hell out of her, and it's going to be a great payoff. But the fans don't seem to want anything to do with that. They are really hating on Nia Jax right now. They do not feel that she's allowed to get heat for this situation because she has a reputation of hurting people. So somehow that disqualifies her in the fans' eyes and disqualifies WWE from turning this into an angle. But I think that's bullshit. If all these fans really care about Becky Lynch as much as they say they do, they should want this to be turned into an angle. Because if they don't do anything with this, and they just job Nia Jax out or sweep her under the rug or something like that, when you finally have that big match with Becky Lynch, it isn't going to mean dick. I think WWE would be so incredibly foolish if they did not take advantage of this and build for a big-time match where the fans can finally have their moment. The fans can finally watch Becky Lynch beat the hell out of Nia Jax. And she got a lot of heat as well when she tweeted out the picture of her hand, saying, hey, isn't anybody going to ask how my hand is doing? And the fans lost their mind. I mean, I could not believe it how many angry people there were out there. Even analysts, even people that cover wrestling were mad at Nia Jax for tweeting this. I'm like, dude, she's working you, man. This is clearly done by WWE. Nia Jax would not go out and do that on her own without the blessing of WWE or without WWE telling her to do it, and I'm sure without the blessing of Becky Lynch. I had made the argument on Twitter that back in 1997, when Owen Hart dumped Stone Cold Steve Austin on his head at SummerSlam and damn near paralyzed him, Owen was wearing t-shirts on WWE TV that said, I just broke your neck. And there were only two arguments that I was constantly hearing against that. Number one was, oh, it happened 20 years ago and fans weren't watching back then. And I'm like, well, it doesn't make it any less true. And besides, I still consider 1997 like recent times. So to me, it doesn't seem like that long ago. But who cares if you weren't watching? It doesn't mean it didn't happen. And the other argument I was getting was that, yeah, but Owen didn't have a reputation of hurting people. And I'm like, so what does that even have to do with it? Why does this reputation disqualify her from getting heat? If anything, it helps it. In my mind, I think it's good that Nia Jax has this reputation because that just adds to the hate and that just fuels the fans' anger and makes for a really fun and big payoff when she does get in the ring with Becky Lynch down the road. And on top of that, Owen might have not had a reputation like Nia Jax. Owen Hart was a very talented and safe and skilled worker. But let me tell you, that long-term damage that Owen Hart did to Stone Cold Steve Austin is far worse than all of Nia Jax's botches combined. That's a fact, because Stone Cold Steve Austin was only able to wrestle a few more years because of that pile driver. He may have only retired a couple of years ago had that botch never taken place. So I know Owen didn't have the reputation, but the damage he did was just as bad, if not worse. So I really don't see the difference in Owen taking advantage of a situation to get heat and Nia Jax doing the same thing. And of course, everybody is also screaming about Nia Jax's unsafe in-ring work and that she should be sent back to developmental and she should go back to NXT and train more and blah, 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 blah. I understand. Yes, I get it. But for me personally, I've said this in my last couple of episodes, I just feel, somewhat uncomfortable about trying to determine who needs more work or more training or what punishment is suitable for Nia Jax. I'm just going to let the people in WWE handle that. There are a lot of brilliant legends working in that company that handle the talent and the training, guys like Fit Finlay and Dean Malenko and Shawn Michaels and Triple H and guys like that. I'm going to let the professionals decide how to handle Nia Jax. And on top of that, it's not like there's no repercussions at all. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I know it's very easy to say, oh, Nia Jax should be sent back down to NXT, but we really haven't seen that happen. We don't see people going in reverse these days, heading back to NXT, unless they just make an appearance there for a couple of matches like Cesaro did or like Natalya did. We haven't really seen anybody get that full-blown demotion yet. It's not like back in the day when they had OVW and they would send Mark Henry there to train or get in better shape or send the Big Show there to work on his attitude problems or whatever. NXT is structured a little bit differently now. So don't automatically assume that WWE is doing nothing about this situation. How the fuck do you know? There is a wrestling ring set up prior to every single Raw and every single house show. Who's to say WWE's not making Nia Jax spend some time in the ring, work out in there a little bit prior to shows to get better? Who's to say they're not sticking her on a plane and sending her down to Orlando to work out at the Performance Center for a few days or a couple of weeks, but still make TV every week on Monday Night Raw? Who's to say that management isn't having a sit-down meeting with Nia Jax and saying, hey, you need to be more careful. You are starting to really hurt some girls. We're going to take some steps with you on working to get you better in the ring. And, they might even be punishing her. They might be fining her. We don't know what the hell is going on backstage. And I can't believe how many fans are insinuating as well that Nia Jax somehow did this on purpose to Becky Lynch. I've seen a lot of angry and mean tweets directed at Nia Jax. People are fat-shaming her now. The same people that defended her when she was fat-shamed a few months ago. Now that she's punched Becky Lynch in the face, apparently it's now totally fine to talk about how much food she eats in catering and shit like that. So I've been seeing a lot of just anger, negativity, immaturity, and just viciousness hurled at Nia Jax, and I think it's a little bit extreme, and I think we should all just let WWE handle it and not jump to conclusions. Oh, they're rewarding Nia Jax. That's what everybody's telling me. Don't you think it's fucked up that after she botches like that, they're giving her a reward? Well, no, I don't think it's weird at all. If it leads to a match with Becky Lynch, that's clearly what they're going to do here at some point. So I think having a strong Nia Jax who's winning a bunch of matches and playing up the fact that she beat up Becky Lynch. You know, you saw at Survivor Series the way she was, after she would punch somebody, she would kind of shake her hand. So for me personally, I mean, there's two sides to this. You know, some fans are completely disgusted about how WWE's handling this, and others don't have a problem with it at all. I'm one of the people that doesn't have a problem with it at all. I didn't mind the tweet. I didn't mind Nia Jax winning at Survivor Series. I don't mind WWE or Nia Jax turning this into an angle. This is exactly what I would do if I was working in WWE. You can't rewind. You can't change the botch. You can't take Nia Jax's fist out of Becky Lynch's face. All you can do is move forward and make the best of it. And I think WWE is doing the right thing by trying to make a positive out of a huge, ugly negative. I mean, this was a horrible thing that happened to Becky Lynch. She got pulled from her Survivor Series match against Ronda Rousey. You would have to be absolutely insane to not follow up with this. And that's what I've been saying to the fans that are really jumping to defend Becky Lynch. If you really love her as much as you say, you want this angle to continue to move forward so she can get her revenge on Nia Jax. You're going to be happy if you just be patient and see it through. So the whole Nia Jax thing has been highly controversial, and fans are all up in arms about everything, and they're pissed at WWE. And there seems to be an awful lot of assumption in the fans' minds as to what's going on here. Oh, Nia Jax is being rewarded, and she's not being fired because she's part of The Rock's family, and she's being protected. That's bullshit. You want to know how many fucking Samoans have been released or fired over the years? Plenty of them. You've got Umaga, you've got Rosie, you've got Yokozuna, you've got Samu, you've got the Tonga Kid. Rikishi has been in and out a couple of times. Just because you're a cousin of The Rock does not mean you're unfireable, and also does not mean you're not going to get punished. So I'm not going to assume anything with Nia Jax, and if Nia Jax does need some more in-ring work, who's to say they're not doing that? It doesn't have to be in NXT. It can be right there inside of a WWE arena. Nia Jax can work out on every show. I, for one, am excited to see how they wind up getting to the Nia Jax and Becky Lynch match in the future, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on when I get into Raw and Smackdown, because Nia Jax has a title shot at TLC, and that's going to present a lot of interesting possibilities for these women at that pay-per-view. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Let's move on to the big women's match next. We had Ronda Rousey taking on Charlotte. Now, this match, of course, was thrown together last minute due to the injury of Becky Lynch, and this match most of us had pegged for WrestleMania. I myself thought for sure that Rousey and Charlotte would meet at WrestleMania. I even pitched the idea of the two of these ladies main eventing WrestleMania. That is likely going to be out the window now because WWE had to scramble after the injury to Becky Lynch, and luckily they had a second dream match kind of waiting in the wings. So they kind of gave us this one early, and I was a little bit concerned that they might be wasting it, you know, with no build and thrown together 4 days prior to the pay-per-view. I wasn't sure how good it was going to be, but it turned out to be great. I loved the match. The match itself was really good, really cool to see these two alphas in there beating the hell out of each other. And then Charlotte, it appeared to turn heel. Ronda Rousey is kicking her ass. I can't remember how it happened, but I think Rousey was chasing Charlotte around the ring or something. Charlotte reaches under the ring, grabs a kendo stick, nails Ronda Rousey with it, gets disqualified, and then proceeds just to beat the crap out of Rousey in the ring with the kendo sticks, breaking at least one of them over the back of Ronda Rousey. She had welts and scrapes and bruises and blood all over her. And then Charlotte went and got the steel chair from outside the ring and placed Ronda Rousey's head into it, kind of like Austin did to Pillman's ankle all those years ago, and then stomped on the chair. And Ronda, I've always said right from the start, since she's gotten there at WrestleMania, she does an amazing job selling, and she really looks like she takes an ass whooping in there when she's in there facing all the women that she's fought so far, even Stephanie McMahon, Nia Jax, Alexa Bliss, Nikki Bella. Rousey, I thought, has done a really good job of, you know, making them look as good as possible. And this beatdown that she suffered at the hands of Charlotte was brutal, it was gnarly, and it was awesome. And what I couldn't understand sitting in the crowd, it fucking blew my mind, is the fans are cheering Charlotte. They're chanting, "Thank you, Charlotte." and showing her nothing but support, which was completely confusing me because just a couple of weeks prior to this, everybody was on Charlotte's case because WWE is making her the next Roman Reigns, and Becky Lynch is going to have to play second fiddle to her, and WWE is shoving Charlotte down our throats, and all of this nonsense, this Roman Reigns 2.0 nonsense. Here, just a couple of weeks later, all of a sudden the fans are chanting, "We love you, Charlotte, thank you, Charlotte," chanting, "You deserve it" to Ronda Rousey, which to me blew my mind. I thought Ronda Rousey would get booed in her match with Becky Lynch, but I didn't think she would get booed in her match with Charlotte. I thought because Charlotte kind of has a little bit of heat with the audience right now, it's not her fault. I guess the fans are more irritated with WWE, but I thought for sure that between these two, Rousey would get the cheers, especially after the heel turn, especially after Charlotte viciously attacks Ronda Rousey and the fans cheer. I don't even think the fans know what they want sometimes. I found that completely baffling. I feel like we may have seen the exact same finish had Becky Lynch been in the match originally. You know, think about that. If Becky Lynch were to take on Ronda Rousey, I can totally see a finish like that taking place with Becky Lynch beating the hell out of Ronda Rousey and the crowd going nuts and Becky showing that, you know, vicious, stone cold type of side to her. But Charlotte doing it kind of took everybody off guard and the fans loved it anyway. And Charlotte basically moved into that role that Becky Lynch was in prior to this. Now, a lot of fans, I think, are upset by this now because now Charlotte has been given Becky's spot or whatever. I'm not really looking at it like that. I think Becky Lynch is going to be just fine. She's still champion, don't forget. And we're getting Charlotte and Rousey out of the way now, which means Charlotte and Rousey will probably not happen at WrestleMania, which means Becky and Rousey could wind up happening at WrestleMania. And that's what I've said right from the start, that this crazy, stupid botch by Nia Jax may turn out to be a blessing in disguise in hindsight 6 months from now when we see where all this goes and how it all, culminates and blows off. So I'm willing to give all of this stuff a chance here. And Charlotte now with this new character and with Becky kind of giving her the opportunity to face Rousey last week on Smackdown and the two shared a little bit of a hug, I'm kind of happy to see the two of them on the same page. I'm not concerned about how it's going to affect Becky. The fact that these two might have a similar attitude now, to me, is a good thing, and it might even wind up being able to lead to that inevitable 4 horsewomen versus 4 horsewomen match that we are all assuming is going to have to take place sometime in 2019. So maybe the table is starting to get set for that, especially with Charlotte and Becky now kind of having a similar attitude. And I have a pretty good feeling, provided Becky is healthy by TLC, that the two of them will be wreaking a lot of havoc in that title match between Nia Jax and Ronda Rousey. But as far as the match between Rousey and Charlotte went, for a match that was thrown together 4 days early, when the advertised match had to be scrapped last minute, I thought the two did a really good job, and I actually had a little bit of sympathy for Ronda Rousey. I have no idea why the fans were shitting on her so hard, but the match was entertaining, it was good, and I think WWE landed on their feet in this situation and put on a really good match when the Becky Lynch injury could have been disastrous. The men's 5-on-5 match was all about Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman was completely dominant in this thing. Raw won this match as well. SmackDown just got their asses handed to him on this pay-per-view. But what's interesting about this is that Strowman was basically the focal point of this match. He played the role of a Diesel or an Undertaker or any other badass that mows through an entire team of wrestlers. There's been a lot of speculation that Drew McIntyre might be the next guy in line for the title, and that might still be the case come WrestleMania, but for right now, it looks like Strowman is the guy. Drew McIntyre had one big elimination. He eliminated Samoa Joe right out of the gate. I don't even know how long the match was going on, but Samoa Joe was eliminated immediately after a Claymore. It makes me think that maybe Samoa Joe was injured, because why would he be eliminated so quickly like that? But Braun Strowman took care of the rest. I don't know how many other people he eliminated. He might have eliminated all of them, the rest of them, 4 people, and wound up surviving on his team. And I'm going to talk a lot about Strowman here in a minute when we discuss Monday Night Raw. The main event, I think, was match of the night. Daniel Bryan versus Brock Lesnar was awesome. I really enjoyed this match. Really cool to see heel Daniel Bryan. I mean, Daniel Bryan had only turned heel a few days prior to this, so we hadn't even seen him out there as a heel yet. And he was being a ballsy little son of a bitch, too. The way he was mocking Brock Lesnar and kind of dancing around and doing Brock's mannerisms. He showed absolutely no fear whatsoever of Brock Lesnar. The match started out pretty slow. The fans, I thought, were getting a little bit antsy and a little bit ornery because Brock Lesnar immediately started German suplexing Daniel Bryan all over the place, which made us all gasp, because when Daniel Bryan sells a German suplex, I mean, he literally looks like he dies. He gets folded up like a card table and he just lays there motionless. And then finally things picked up. I think the referee took a bump, and that's when Daniel Bryan nailed Brock Lesnar with a dick kick, and then he went on the offensive. And then the match really started to heat up. Daniel Bryan almost had the match won a couple of times, had Brock in the yes lock once or twice, and Brock was really close to tapping out. Paul Heyman is going apeshit on the outside of the ring. Eventually, after a lot of close calls for Brock, he nails Daniel Bryan with the F5 and is able to defeat him. But I thought the match was really good. It was definitely my favorite match of Survivor Series. And it just goes to show how good Brock Lesnar can still be when he's in there with the right opponent. I have loved every match Brock has ever had with some of the smaller guys, with CM Punk, with AJ Styles, now with Daniel Bryan. These matches are good, and Brock Lesnar sold his ass off for Daniel Bryan. He really did. One thing I will say about Brock Lesnar, for all the fans that have issues with him, he's a part-timer, he's lazy, he doesn't deserve it, blah, 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 all the shit you hear every day from the fans. At least Brock Lesnar is willing to do business. At least Brock Lesnar isn't arrogant enough to think that he is some big badass UFC fighter and he's too good to sell for Daniel Bryan or to make somebody like Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles look good. Every time Brock has matches like this, he kicks ass in there. So I thought this match was good. It was fun. Definitely the match of the night. So overall, I give Survivor Series a good grade. I'm going to give it a solid B, maybe a B+. I don't think it's good enough to give it quite an A, but I think the strength of the singles matches helped make this pay-per-view. I was much more intrigued by Charlotte and Rousey and Bryan and Brock than I was with any of the elimination Smackdown versus Raw matches, for sure. What about our buddy Enzo? Enzo made the news. He showed up at Survivor Series. I guess he bought like a second row seat. I saw him. I was sitting on the other side of the arena, and I did not notice Enzo until he stood up and started going crazy, and the security snatched him away. And I immediately tweeted, I'm like, did you guys see that? But I guess a few fans had noticed him in disguise. He was wearing like a hoodie and an ugly-ass wig or something, and he was sitting behind that long-haired guy that's like on every show in the front row of every pay-per-view. So he was noticed by a few fans, but I didn't see him until he jumped up. And according to all of you who are watching at home, you didn't really see him because I don't think the camera was on him at the time, or the cameras. They were shifting the cameras to not have to show him on screen. So I don't know if there was a glimpse or what. Like I said, I have not gone back and watched either of these shows on the WWE Network yet, but I plan to. But I don't really know how visible Enzo was there. But what a dumbass. What is he thinking? What blows my mind the most about Enzo is that inside of his empty fucking brainless head, he actually thinks he's creating buzz for himself. He actually thinks that he's going to get himself more publicity, when in reality, the only thing he's going to get himself is heat. And he's going to burn his bridge with WWE. Now, I don't expect them, or I don't think they would really have any interest in bringing him back in ever again anyway. But if they did, that's probably all out the window now because of this little stunt that he pulled. And if he got fans talking about him for a couple of days, great. Congratulations, Enzo. You got yourself trending on Twitter for a whole day and a half. Now what? Let's move right along now into Monday Night Raw. Now that Survivor Series is in the books, WWE is now focused on TLC. That is the next pay-per-view, and we had a lot of matches set up for this event, and we did have some pretty big news coming out of Monday Night Raw. And a lot of that big news took place right in the opening segment. WWE set up a huge injury angle at the beginning of Raw. We had Stephanie McMahon in the ring cutting a promo with Baron Corbin and Braun Strowman. She announced that the two will face each other at TLC, and it was also announced in recent weeks that Braun would be allowed to pick the stipulation in his match with Baron Corbin. And not surprising, Braun Strowman just happens to pick a TLC match. Wow, imagine that. I thought it would have been hilarious if Braun Strowman threw a curveball at WWE and said, I want a Hell in the Cell match. That would have been pretty funny, I thought. But there are actually a whole bunch of stipulations in this match. Stephanie announces that if Braun Strowman does defeat Baron Corbin in the TLC match, then he will get a rematch with Brock Lesnar for the Universal title at the Royal Rumble. The other stipulation relates to Baron Corbin. Stephanie said that even though Raw was so dominant at Survivor Series, Baron Corbin still has a chance to lose his GM hood on Monday Night Raw. If he does not beat Braun Strowman, he will no longer be general manager. He will lose all authority. But if he does defeat Braun Strowman at TLC, then he will be the permanent general manager of Monday Night Raw. So we got all sorts of possibilities here for this match. And then right after that, Stephanie made a 6-man elimination match to kick off Monday Night Raw. It was going to be Baron Corbin, Drew McIntyre, and Bobby Lashley taking on Braun Strowman, Finn Balor, and Elias. That match would open up the show. Elias and Finn Finn Balor get eliminated, leaving Braun Strowman all by himself to take on these three monsters, and the three of them just annihilate Braun Strowman's elbow. They attack him, they tie his elbow up with a belt, they're smashing it with chairs, and then they sandwich his elbow in between the ring steps and pick up the top half of the steel steps and smash Braun Strowman's elbow into oblivion. It looked great. Braun Strowman happened to be cut open on his elbow, so there was a lot of blood everywhere, which looked really good. He was selling the hell out of it. He was telling the referees, I can't feel my fingers, I can't feel my hands. So I was thinking to myself, what are they doing here? You know, during the live stream on Monday, I thought that this might be an injury angle. The only other thing I could think of was that maybe in storyline they're trying to give Baron Corbin a chance to win, you know, because otherwise, if it's 100% Braun versus 100% Baron Corbin, Braun's going to win hands down here, right? So you have to have some sort of, you know, mystery in the fans' minds as to who's going to win this match. But come to find out, Braun Strowman actually does have a legitimate injury, and he's going to undergo or is undergoing elbow surgery, and basically they just hope to have him back in time for TLC. TLC is still 4 weeks away, so he's got some time to heal up here, and hopefully the injury is not serious enough to where it's going to keep him out of any significant action. But they're going forward with this advertised match, and the only thing that makes me nervous here is that if Braun Strowman is not healthy enough, if he's not healed enough in time, and he's not cleared to work, that means this is the third straight pay-per-view where the biggest match on the card is going to be changed last minute. So I'm really hoping that Braun Strowman is able to compete at TLC, and I'm sure he will have some sort of a bandage or a cast or a sling or something on his arm. As it stands right now, as I see it, provided that Braun Strowman is healthy and he makes the match, I think you got to give him the victory here. Baron Corbin, I thought, has actually done really well in this role as the Applebee's waiter, you know, with this dumbass outfit that he wears. He's probably been the most relevant he's ever been since coming up to the main roster. So I think all of that's good, but at the same time, he is a regular active wrestler. You know, this is these roles are usually reserved for other people, not for regular in-ring talent. So maybe they're transitioning Corbin back to being a main roster member, and they might put Kurt Angle back in the role of general manager if Baron Corbin winds up losing. But I'm starting to think that, you know, he's not going to be GM forever, and I can't see this being a long-term thing, and they might be moving Corbin back just into a wrestling role at TLC. Now, if Braun can't go, I don't know if he's going to be replaced or if they're just going to do away with the match entirely, or how Braun Strowman winds up getting that match with Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble. Not sure how any of that is going to happen if Braun Strowman can't make the match at TLC. But hopefully he'll be there, whether he's limited or not. He'll make the match, and he'll beat Baron Corbin and move on to face Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble. Now, the only problem I see with that match at the Royal Rumble is Braun Strowman potentially losing. I've talked about for weeks that I feel like Drew McIntyre really needs to be the next guy. I would love to see him, you know, be the guy that they make in response to Roman Reigns' illness. You got to make another big star. You got to launch another guy. And I think you do that at a WrestleMania. So if Braun Strowman goes into the Royal Rumble to face Brock Lesnar, I know fans are going to hate to hear this, but I almost hope that Brock Lesnar beats Braun Strowman. Because if Drew McIntyre, and this is a big if, I'm not saying WWE is going to do this, this is just what I want to see them do. I would love to see Drew McIntyre win the Universal title in the main event of WrestleMania. And I think a victory over Brock Lesnar would carry more weight than a victory over Braun Strowman. So as far as I'm concerned, we've seen Brock Lesnar be champion for so long. He was champion 500 plus days that first run. He's recently won the belt back here. If I have to be patient for a few more months to watch this guy lose again, I can handle that. So, you know, it's a big if. It just depends on what WWE has in mind. If they have Drew McIntyre pegged to win the Royal Rumble, and then Brock Lesnar to beat Braun, and then you got Drew and Brock head-to-head main event, I think that would be badass. But if Braun Strowman wins the title, then I don't know what he does. Does he hold the title just until WrestleMania only to drop it again? Or does he retain and goes on a huge, long, dominant run? Which then what do they do with Drew McIntyre? So the way I see things right now, I think Drew should be the guy, at least in my mind, and I'm hoping that's what they do. But in order to do that and to get to that destination, Brock Lesnar's got to retain until WrestleMania, and that is likely going to be a very tough pill for the fans to swallow. We actually had a Ronda Rousey promo. I actually thought they might keep her off of TV one week just to sell the beatdown from Charlotte, but she's out there pissed off. She gets on the mic, vows to get revenge on Charlotte. And Rousey, it's funny, like every time she's on the mic, Ronda is Ronda. She's got her own kind of style on the mic. Sometimes when she speaks, I cringe, and then sometimes when she speaks, I really like it. There have been rumors that Paul Heyman has been working with her on her promos, and when you listen to the verbiage, it makes a lot of sense. She's definitely saying things that Paul Heyman would say. She just doesn't deliver it quite as well as Paul Heyman. But Rousey is not, she's not entirely bad on the mic. She's not entirely good either. I think she could be a lot worse. But she kind of has this own style that I have trouble describing right now. But the match with Nia Jax, because Nia Jax won the Battle Royal at Evolution, is on for TLC. And this match is funny because it feels like it's in the way. Rousey is out there on Raw cutting a promo on Charlotte, vowing to get revenge on her somehow or some way, but yet she's got this match with Nia Jax at TLC. So you got two women on one side on Monday Night Raw, Nia Jax and Ronda Rousey, who have huge issues with two women on Smackdown. So I don't know how they're going to get to these matches. I don't know how you're eventually going to do Becky Lynch versus Nia Jax and Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte again. I do know this. I think at TLC, Becky Lynch and Charlotte need to interfere in this match. I don't think Ronda Rousey needs to beat Nia Jax because I want to see Nia not lose at all until she faces Becky Lynch. But at the same time, I don't think Ronda Rousey should be losing right now either. And I certainly would not end Ronda Rousey's streak at fucking TLC. So what I think they should do here is have the match between the two, have Becky and Charlotte hit the ring together and beat the piss out of both of them together. Leave them both laying, and then just celebrate with the crowd or whatever, setting up some way for these women to face again. Maybe at the Royal Rumble, they might all be in the Royal Rumble match. Well, I guess Becky and Rousey won't. So it's just going to be weird with these women being on separate brands, how they're going to get to these matches. I think you need to save Nia Jax and Becky Lynch for a little while, but maybe not WrestleMania. I don't think Nia Jax versus Becky Lynch needs to be saved for that long. I think you can do it earlier than that. I think you can do it at the Royal Rumble. I had even pitched the idea of just doing a simple trade. Just having Paige and Baron Corbin trade Nia Jax for Charlotte. That puts Nia over on SmackDown where she can feud with Becky, and Charlotte over on Raw where she can feud with Rousey. But instead, they're doing the Rousey and Jax match at TLC, and it'll be really interesting to see how they go about doing this. There's really a lot of different ways that they can make these matches happen. So I think what I would like to see in the immediate future is for Charlotte and Becky to sabotage the TLC match. They're somehow able to give us a Charlotte and Rousey rematch prior to WrestleMania, and we are somehow also able to get a Becky Lynch versus Nia Jax match prior to WrestleMania, and then Becky and Ronda face each other on the grandest stage of them all, and that can still be the main event. I thought it didn't get much bigger than Charlotte versus Ronda Rousey. I thought for a women's match, you cannot get bigger than that. But considering everything that's gone on with Becky Lynch and the punch to the face and all of the support she has from the audience, that should be your main event. Fucking do it. Figure out a way to do it, WWE. Give us Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch in the main event of WrestleMania. Fuck, unify the belts if you have to. I don't care. Just do it. I think it would be phenomenal. So it's all up to WWE at this point. It all sounds good when I'm talking. All these scenarios sound wonderful in our heads, but WWE actually has to execute it and follow through with it, and that is a big, big, big if right there. I also like the fact that despite Ronda Rousey's injuries and the beating she suffered at the hands of Charlotte at Survivor Series, that she still competed on Monday Night Raw in an open challenge. She wanted somebody to come out to the ring and face her. She experienced a little bit of pushback from Baron Corbin. I don't even know why he came out there. It seemed completely pointless. He came out there to basically say no, only to agree to let Ronda Rousey compete. Mickie James answered the challenge, and Mickie James got beat. So Ronda Rousey is angry, she's pissed, she's mad, and she wants revenge. And there's going to be a big showdown of some kind at TLC between a lot of these women. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm not going to really mention too much else other than that on Monday Night Raw, except for Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. The show kind of revolved around the two of them. Seth Rollins was in the ring cutting a promo, and Dean Ambrose appeared on the screen, kind of goading Seth to come find him in the backstage area. He goes, "Hey, I'm right here, just come find me." So Seth runs out of the ring to hunt down Dean Ambrose, and he spends most of the night circling the arena looking for Dean Ambrose. He can't find him anywhere. At one point, Dean is even spying on Seth Rollins when he's doing an interview with Charlie Caruso or one of those girls. And finally, at the end, Seth appears to give up. He just says, "Forget it, I can't find him, I'm going home." And that's when Dean Ambrose closes the show by going out to the ring, talking some shit. Turns out Seth never left. He hits the ring. The two start brawling. Dean Ambrose turns the tide on Seth Rollins and hits him with the dirty deeds and gets the better of Seth yet again. And that match is also set for TLC for the Intercontinental title, Seth Rollins versus Dean Ambrose. So overall on Monday Night Raw, like I said, for a post-pay-per-view show, wasn't very great, but still a lot better than SmackDown. But this was one of the worst SmackDowns of the year, which is a shame. I think the biggest thing that annoys me the most about this past week's SmackDown is that SmackDown got annihilated by Monday Night Raw at Survivor Series. I thought there was going to be huge ramifications on SmackDown. I thought this was going to be part of some sort of a storyline or some sort of an angle to get SmackDown, revived or get them looking better. And it seemed like they gave less than a shit. Shane McMahon, the commissioner of SmackDown, didn't seem to care at all that they got their asses handed to him at Survivor Series. He was even involved in like a comedy segment with The Miz. So I don't know why SmackDown lost so badly. I thought they would turn this into an angle. But they basically ignored the whole fact that they are clearly the lesser show in WWE's eyes. And they mentioned nothing about it, so I found that really stupid. But the show did open up with Charlotte out there cutting a promo. She was proud of what she did to Ronda Rousey. Paige wound up coming out and agreeing with Charlotte that she liked what she did to Ronda Rousey as well, but at the same time, Charlotte put her hands on a whole bunch of WWE officials, so Paige has chosen to fine Charlotte $100,000, which is just blows my mind. Like, I don't know where WWE comes up with these fake dollar amounts for these fake fines. A few years ago when Brock Lesnar busted open Randy Orton at SummerSlam, he was fined $500, and now Charlotte is fined $100,000, so I don't know what the hell they're thinking there. But Charlotte is out there cutting a pretty good heel promo, and I'm liking it. And like I said earlier, I'm intrigued by Charlotte and Becky Lynch being on the same page. They just got done feuding, so there's no reason to keep them feuding. So, kind of give them a similar attitude, and the two of these women can go on an ass-kicking rampage, on Nia Jax and Ronda Rousey in the future. And like I said, it might even be setting up that future 4 horsewomen versus 4 horsewomen match at some point. We still have a long ways to go until we can get there. Shayna Baszler is still NXT champion. The other 2 MMA girls are extremely inexperienced. You got Sasha and Bayley, doing nothing over on Monday Night Raw. So there's a lot to put together here to get to that, but we might be getting the first rumblings of that finally taking place sometime in the future. But as Charlotte is out there cutting what appears to be a heel promo, she's then interrupted by a couple of heels. The Iconics come out there and start talking shit. Charlotte winds up facing Billie Kay in a match. She challenges them both, I think, and says which one of you is going to be the next Ronda Rousey. She gets in the ring with Billie Kay, beats her in about 5.5 seconds, and then challenges Peyton Royce immediately after that and has a match with Peyton Royce. Peyton gets disqualified when Billie interferes, but then Charlotte proceeds just to beat the hell out of both of them, much like she did to Rousey the night before, and she was throwing them across the announce table and ramming their heads into the table and just beat the hell out of them, which is just weird because they're heels. And Charlotte is a heel, and maybe she's not a heel, maybe she's more of a tweener, and that's where I was seeing a lot of the complaining on Twitter. A lot of people were saying to themselves, oh my god, WWE is giving Charlotte Becky's gimmick. And I'm like, just chill, man. I don't even think that's happening. To me, Becky is so over with the audience, and she is a goddamn star. It does not matter what they do with anybody else. The fans are going to love Becky Lynch. It really shouldn't matter what WWE does with Charlotte. And remember, Charlotte was put in this position because of what happened to Becky Lynch. Had Becky Lynch not got hit in the face, none of this would be happening. So you can't really blame Charlotte. And I certainly don't think because Nia Jax caved in the face of Becky Lynch that WWE's just going to cast Becky aside now or de-push her or anything like that. I really don't see that being the direction at all. Some fans are concerned that WWE might strip Becky Lynch of the SmackDown title due to the concussion. Now that actually might be okay. I know on paper that scares everybody shitless, but think about it. If you're trying to get to a Becky Lynch Ronda Rousey match, how the hell are you going to do that if they're both champions? So if they don't want Becky Lynch to lose the title, maybe they can use the concussion as an excuse to strip her of the title. And then that allows Becky to enter the Royal Rumble. And if Becky wins the Royal Rumble, she can challenge whoever she wants, and that could be a good way to get her over to Monday Night Raw to challenge Ronda Rousey for the Raw title at WrestleMania. That would be one good way to get there. So I, for one, if WWE chooses to strip Becky Lynch of the title, I'm fine with it because, number one, it keeps her strong. She doesn't have to lose the belt clean or get beat by anybody. And then she can go on and have that big match with Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania instead of Survivor Series, and everybody wins. wins, right? So that could be one way of them getting there. Another way they could get there is have Becky Lynch defend the title against somebody. I don't know if she's going to be healthy enough to work TLC, probably not. But if Becky Lynch defended the SmackDown title and Nia Jax interfered and cost Becky the match, that could also be a way to set up Becky and Nia. So like I said earlier, there's just lots of different ways they can do this here. But one thing I am absolutely not concerned about at all is how WWE's handling of Charlotte is going to affect Becky Lynch. Other than that, on SmackDown, I did mention Miz and Shane McMahon earlier on. You know, they did have a little Miz TV segment, and it seems like the Miz might be slowly transitioning into a babyface role, which is crazy. He proposed a tag team alliance with Shane McMahon, and then even called out a couple of local performers to have a match against, and Miz wound up losing in kind of a fluke. And like I said, it was more of a comedy angle than anything else. We had another match between Randy Orton and Rey Mysterio. Now, that match was actually really good. I didn't mind that match. But I gotta say, I'm slightly worried about the WWE and where they're going with this unmasking of Rey Mysterio storyline. Randy Orton was very vicious in this match. I love the spot where Rey did a dive underneath the bottom rope only for Randy Orton to catch him in an RKO on the outside of the ring. That was a great spot. And after he finally hits him with the RKO and pins him, he gets a steel chair and places Rey Mysterio's head in the chair and then rams it into the ring post in a very brutal looking spot, and then completely rips the mask off of Rey Mysterio. He was completely unmasked. His face was kind of buried in the steel chair, so he was hidden a little bit, but Randy Orton walked away with a souvenir of Rey Mysterio's mask, and I'm only curious, I'm wondering if this is going to lead to some sort of a mask match between these two. I don't know why at this stage of Rey Mysterio's career, why WWE would unmask him now in his final run, or why Rey would want to be unmasked, or if this is going to lead to something else, or if it's going to lead to nothing, and he's going to show back up on TV next week with the mask back on, and, you know, no future match with Randy Orton will even take place. I really don't know. But to me, it seems like they might be setting up some sort of a match where the mask will be on the line between these two. I guess we'll have to wait and see. They had another one of those stupid holiday food fights that they do every year. I don't even want to talk about that. It makes me sick. I fucking hate those segments. But the best by far part of SmackDown, I think in my mind, was the amazing supervillain promo by Daniel Bryan. I love this guy as a heel. I'm glad they turned him. I was shocked when they did. A lot of people were like, why would WWE turn him heel? He's so beloved. And I kind of agreed at first, but I think Daniel Bryan is going to do just fine. You know, he's been a heel before, and he's been a damn good one, and he was amazing on SmackDown. I like this new side of Daniel Bryan, and I think he's the first ever WWE champion in history to cut a promo wearing a Kurt Cobain cardigan. You know, so Daniel Bryan is in there acting really psychotic and really bizarre, talked about how he spent time in a hyperbaric chamber and he spent time meditating to get himself healed up, and how he never gave up on his dreams even though the fans gave up on him. He had very interesting facial expressions. You know, he was calm one moment and yelling the next. He was squatting down and kneeling at one point. I like it. I like it a lot. It was also announced that his match with AJ Styles at TLC for the title is official. We figured that would be the match at TLC, and it will likely be the main event since there is no Brock Lesnar on this show. And Daniel Bryan, man, I think he's going to have a lot of fun being a heel. And right now, I do not see any way that he's going to drop that belt back to AJ Styles at TLC. I think Daniel Bryan should take the belt into WrestleMania to defend it and possibly drop it. Who should he drop it to, you might ask? Who would have thought we'd ever think about this scenario, about The Miz versus Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania, but instead, it's going to be a heel Daniel Bryan versus a babyface Miz. I think that's a really big possibility. If you would have told me when Daniel Bryan announced his return to the ring that following year at WrestleMania he would be a heel to face a babyface Miz, I would have thought I fell asleep and woke up on Mars. It would have made no sense. But now you can kind of start seeing that possibly being the case here. I kind of want to see it happen, because I said all the way back last summer with Miz and Daniel Bryan that it would be awesome if they faced each other at WrestleMania, but it was going to be hard for WWE to stretch that angle out that long and get that much mileage out of that when WrestleMania is still so far away. But if you do a little swap here, you know, I thought it was going to be The Miz beating AJ Styles for the title and a babyface Daniel Bryan winning the Royal Rumble, and the two clash at WrestleMania with Daniel Bryan dethroning The Miz and getting that big WrestleMania moment. It might be reversed now. It might be Daniel Bryan going into Mania to drop it against a babyface Miz. Now, right now, I know it's only November, but right now, that's kind of what I want to see. If it was up to me, I would see The Miz defeat Daniel Bryan for the title and Drew McIntyre defeat Brock Lesnar for the Universal title at WrestleMania. That's my dream scenario in my head. But Daniel Bryan right now is this kind of this super villain, this sadistic type of guy. I really like it. I like his attitude. I like his look. I like his demeanor. I think he looks great with the WWE title over his shoulder. And I think, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I'm happier with Daniel Bryan being champion as a heel more than I would have been if Daniel Bryan won the title as a babyface. I just think he's doing amazing work, and he was the one bright spot in what was a really, really crappy Smackdown live broadcast this week. So I am Team Daniel Bryan right now, love his work, and cannot wait to see where they go in the future with Daniel Bryan. We also saw on Raw and SmackDown a vignette for Lars Sullivan. Lars Sullivan is officially being called up to the roster. I'm not sure when he's going to debut, if it's going to be in 2019 or it's going to be in a couple of weeks, and we don't even know which brand he's going to debut on because both Raw and SmackDown aired this vignette. If it was up to me, I'd put Lars Sullivan on SmackDown. Raw has got a lot of beef right now. They have a lot of big guys over there. They've got Baron Corbin, they've got Drew McIntyre, they've got Braun Strowman, and they've got Bobby Lashley. So I think you should put them over on SmackDown Live, especially if Samoa Joe is injured and is not 100%. You need another ass-kicking badass over on that brand, so I think SmackDown would fit Lars Sullivan a little bit better than Monday Night Raw, but who knows where WWE is going to put him. So that leaves us with TLC. Here's what the card looks like so far. I think we have 4 official matches announced. AJ Styles versus Daniel Bryan for the WWE title. Nia Jax versus Ronda Rousey for the Raw Women's title. Baron Corbin versus Braun Strowman in a TLC match. And Dean Ambrose taking on Seth Rollins for the Intercontinental title. So we'll get a few more matches announced next week. And right now, with those 4 matches alone, especially with the possibilities of the Nia Jax Ronda Rousey match, I'm looking forward to TLC. On paper, these matches look good. Before I get out of here, there's a couple of other news and notes I feel like I should mention. Number one, I want to wish a get well soon to Jim Ross. I don't know if you guys saw, Jim Ross took a nasty spill. I believe he was at his friend's house and he just tripped and fell, landed right on his face, and has a gnarly black eye and a whole bunch of scrapes and bruises. His face looked like ground beef. He looked like he just had a match with Nia Jax, to be honest with you. But Jim Ross is tougher than a $2 steak even after that happened to him. I believe he still attended the Oklahoma football game on Saturday, so he's a badass, but I really hope he's okay. That's unfortunate, and I felt horrible when I saw that horrific picture that he tweeted out of his face. And last but not least, I figured I'd save the best for last. Why don't we talk about our buddy James Ellsworth? Apparently, he was Snapchatting some dick pics to a minor. Apparently, this girl is 16 years old. She went on Twitter or released a video on Twitter kind of telling her story of how she met the guy and how they exchanged numbers or he Snapchatted her or whatever. And it just sounds horrible and creepy. And it doesn't sound like one of those situations where, oh, some woman is coming out of the woodwork to try to destroy somebody's reputation or somebody's character or anything like that. This seems legit. Unfortunately, the evidence is overwhelming here. James Ellsworth did release a statement on Twitter through his attorney where he has denied any wrongdoing, but it's kind of black and white here. There's really no way to twist or turn this. This really looks like Ellsworth did something creepy as shit here. And on top of that, doing that stuff, sending nude photos to a minor, is against the law, and you can get in a lot of trouble for that. And if there is any sort of an investigation launched into James Ellsworth, they are likely going to discover that this is not the first time he has done this. Because any sort of behavior like this, it's definitely not the first time. He's likely done this many times before. And it's so much like Enzo. It's just, what were you thinking, man? You had a career, a good career that you were very lucky to have. James Ellsworth is lucky to find himself randomly on WWE TV one day working with the WWE champion and getting a contract out of it, remaining on good terms after his release to where they even call him in to do cameos from time to time. And then he does this. He completely pisses his entire career away. If never going to work anywhere. WWE is never going to touch him again. I don't think any other wrestling companies are going to want to touch him either or do business with him. Even if by some fluke it comes out that he is innocent, it's almost like it's too late now because now the stigma attached to him, it's embarrassing, it's degrading, and I think it's just not worth it. I cannot believe somebody like Ellsworth, who was lucky enough to have that time in WWE that resulted in his value increasing on the independent circuit. Now he can make a good living, just doing bookings and taking bookings from indie companies. All that is completely gone. completely gone. There's no recovering from this. And his career is probably the least of his worries at this point, because like I said, if they do launch an investigation and they find out that he's done stuff like this before, he could potentially be looking at some jail time too. So this is not good news at all for James Ellsworth. And when I saw the video of that girl, I dare say she looked younger than 16. I don't even know what would make Ellsworth attracted to somebody like that. Just creepy and gross and uncomfortable, and my skin literally crawls just thinking about that. And it's a shame because I liked Ellsworth. I always loved James Ellsworth, but I don't love him anymore. He's a creepy fucking perv. And if all this turns out to be true and he really did these things, then he deserves whatever he gets, whether it's legally or professionally or whatever. He made his own bed and he's going to have to lie in it now. So anyway, I think that's it finally for this episode. Again, I want to apologize for the delay. I'm still pissed off that my first recording of this episode was ruined and I had to redo it. So that can be frustrating sometimes, but hopefully those of you in the United States who are kicking back, chilling out on Thanksgiving Day, enjoying a day off and time with your family are able to put your headphones on or fire up your computer or your tablet and are able to listen to this episode with a nice full belly of turkey. And if not, hopefully you'll catch it this weekend. And then as far as my future goes, you will see me this Monday night as usual for my live Monday Night Raw watch along. So I want to thank you guys for listening. Have a great holiday. Have a great weekend. And I will catch you on Monday night. I'll talk to you then. Peace.